Thank you guys for coming today. We're going to dive into the Ruud M1 training. My name's Rob Dill. I'm the Technical Service Advisor for 2J Supply, and I also do the technical training for 2J Supply. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump on in. If you guys need drinks, water, everything's out there. Bathrooms adjacent to this corridor here. So if you guys need anything, just feel free. If you guys have any questions, this is for you. Please stop me and feel free to ask a question at any time. I will tell you, I am not the smartest guy in this room. There are things that you guys see when you guys are in the field that I don't always see. I always hear later, typically, than sooner. So just bear with me. I'm still learning some of this product just like you guys are. So if there is something that you guys have run across, please bring it up, share it with the group, because we're all here to learn, right? So I'll go ahead and dive into this. So 3 main focuses. We're going to inform, enhance, and understand a little bit about the Bluetooth connectivity. So this is something new that Ruud has come out with, is the Bluetooth Contractor App. We have a whole presentation at the end. We'll go over and dive a little bit into that at the end. So a little overview, we're going to go over some of the equipment. Once again, the Bluetooth connectivity, Econet connectivity. We're going to dive into air handler boards in this first section, furnace boards, and do a little bit of troubleshooting on the back end of these. So why the M1 change? We have three regional standards. We have the North, Southeast, Southwest. We're lucky up here in the Lima area that we don't have to deal so much with the Southern. Our friends in Cincinnati and below us, there's some regional standards that were a little different for them than what we had to deal with. So they call it the 321. 3 different regional standards: North, Southeast, Southwest. 2 regional standards for commercial equipment, and 1 regional standard for heat pumps. So heat pumps nationwide are all under 1 common standard SEER 2 rating. Kind of the difference between SEER and SEER 2. What they have done basically is they have taken, over here we have our old M or SEER rating. All units were rated at 365 watts at 1000 CFM. At a 0.2 static. What they've done is they've taken that rating and they've changed it for more real life situations. So how many times in a home do you really see 0.2 static? Very seldom. Once you've added a filter in there, put a coil on top of that unit, you're typically not seeing 0.2 static. So what they've done and changed to SEER 2 is now they're rating it at 441 watts at 1000 CFM at a 0.5 static. So that's how we've gotten our SEER 2 rating, is they've changed the wattage and what the testing for the inches of water column across that external static is. So a little bit on the air handlers. Not a whole lot of changes on the air handlers. Still have some constant torques. We still have some PSCs. Going up, we have our Econet compatible units. They're all the variable speed models. So anything that's variable speed, whether it's air handler or furnace, is going to be Econet compatible. One thing I will tell you, I've heard through the grapevine, nothing official has come out yet, but probably by the next energy efficiency standard change, when it comes about, PSCs will probably go away in this as well. So just just don't want to be bearer of bad news. I love PSC motors, but yeah. So a little bit with the nomenclature change. On furnaces, really all they did is the 2 used to be towards the end. They moved it up, so now you have an RU96-2 or M that it just indicates the staging of the unit, so it'd either be 1. So they've just kind of changed the nomenclature a little bit on furnaces. So this is your furnace lineup. Starting down at the bottom, you have your builder series, still your constant torque models, 80s and 90s. We do not stock the R92s. We stock the R95 1Ts. And then going from your base all the way up, you're getting into your variable speed. These are all Econet compatible. All your variable speed units will be Econet compatible. Little bit of the blower change. There's some things, and we'll get into that. They've changed some of the blower on these as well. So this is an air handler board here. This is your basic constant torque air handler board. You got your electrical heat connections, still your 24 volts coming in, and then you have your speed taps for your blower on the left side of the board. Something that has changed is on the electric heat strips. They've changed this connector from the old style boards to the new style boards. This just goes through and tells you exactly which connector you need with what air handler versus what heat strip that you have. I'm sure you guys have probably run into that a few times. Yeah. So this is your higher tier air handler board. This is going to be for your variable speed models. You got your 24 volt connection down here. One big thing that you're going to hear me talk a lot about is this new Bluetooth antenna. That's how you connect to your Contractor app. You'll see me point that out quite often. Electric heat connection here, and then this float switch connection here. They've changed that on these new boards. You can hook a float switch up to that now, and if you're in an Econet compatible or even on the Contractor app, if that float switch opens, it'll alarm you that you have a float switch issue. So you're not going to run it in series, you're actually going to connect it to this CS&C now. Okay, and that's going to be your brake. Connecting Econet, nothing's changed there. It's still 4-wire. So you're going to have 4-wire in, 4-wire to the indoor, 4-wire to the outdoor. Nothing's changed there. Biggest thing I caution you on Econet, make sure all your E1s are E1s and all your E2s are E2s. If you reverse those, you will get communication errors. So this is 24 volt connectivity. I'll jump into this a little bit. As you can see, they've got a UP16 there, and it's a 4-wire connectivity. We'll dig into that a little deeper here in a minute. Anytime you have an Econet, it overrides the Contractor app. There are things that you can still do in the Contractor app, but all your settings are going to be done in the Econet control. So you're pairing a unit with the new RA15, UA16, or UP16. It's a 4-wire connection from the outdoor to the indoor unit. There's no longer any 24-volt connectivity. Those are all inverter units, and they have to have 4-wire from the indoor to the outdoor, which means you have to have a furnace on the indoor that will allow you to hook that 4-wire Econet connectivity to it. Heater kits. One thing that they've changed in the heater kits is on all the new heater kits, they've added a resistor into the heater kit, so it's auto detecting now. So when you have an Econet, or even in the Contractor App, it'll tell you exactly what that, you don't have to tell it, it tells you now what that is. So it'll auto detect. Before, you always, in the Econet, you always had to tell it, okay, I got a 10 kW heater kit. Now it's automatically populating within. If you ever see a 0, or if you ever see the 0 in there, it's basically telling you that it can't find the heater kit, or you just don't have a heater kit. So this is that wet switch I was talking about and how you connect it. So you're just going to take the wet switch back through 2 and 3, and then anytime that condensate switch opens, then you'll get that alarm.
I was asking earlier, is like say I have a automatic, not they've got
Correct, because they're all normally closed switches. If any one of those open at any given time, it's going to open that circuit and then give it a flag. Yeah, absolutely. So just a little bit about the sequence of operation. The one thing to know is if you're in legacy, you're going to get a Y1 call. But if you're using that 15, 16 AC or 16 heat pump, it's going to energize E1 and E2. That makes sense? Call for fan. Pretty basic. Call for fan is a call for fan. Emergency heat, you're going to get the W1 call, and it'll bring on your electric heat. Furnace boards, I'm going to dive into this and kind of walk around a little bit about this furnace board. A few things that have changed. Once again, you have your Bluetooth antenna on the furnace board. Okay, you're going to see that on every variable speed board now. Safeties and flame sensors are all wired back to the board now. So in the past, you've always had furnaces that wire in series back to the gas valve, and then you'll get a code off of any of those things opening back to the gas valve. Typically all safeties, right? Well, what they've done when they've changed this new board is everything's home run. So it goes out and comes right back to the board. Your gas valve, low and high fire, same way. Goes out, comes right back to the board. So nothing's wired in series now. Gives you a little bit better code efficiency. So when you're looking up codes, gives you a little bit better direction on what you're looking for at that point. A little bit on the wiring diagram, just kind of wanted to show you that. So your flame sense comes in here, your gas valve goes out, comes back, right back to the board. You don't see any safeties built in that circuit. So everything's a home run. Bluetooth module antenna, still using spark ignition. Something has changed in the flame sense, and we'll get into that here in just a minute. So there's your Bluetooth module. Once again, furnace board, same way, still has that auxiliary switch and condensate switch down here. It'll break and then give you that code back to the... One thing I want to talk about on humidifiers, and I've worked with a lot of different manufacturers, and humidifiers are always that kind of thorn in my side. I always recommend measuring the humidifier terminals. There are manufacturers that use high voltage, there are manufacturers that use dry contacts, and some manufacturers will use both on the same board. So it's just always one of them things that I like to point out, because it is different depending on what board you have. Because if you look at this board, you not only have your 110 volt circuit on the board, but you also have a set of dry contacts. So depending on your configuration and how you want to configure it, depends on which set you're going to use and how it's going to be energized. Correct. So it's all in the configuration. But on other boards, you're not going to have dry contacts. You're only going to have 110 volt. Ruud does it both ways on theirs. So some of them will go one way depending on the board, and other boards are going to have both. Safeties and flame sensor, just wanted to point that out again. Talked about that. Same thing, wiring diagram, gas valves, high and low. So like on this board, we looked at it, the dry contacts aren't on this board. You have a regular 110 volt humidifier, but on this board you have both. That's kind of what I was talking about. I only point that out because I get that question all the time. Is my humidifier powered, or is it dry contacts off the board? Same thing with the furnace board, still 4-wire connectivity when you're going Econet. You got E1, E2, R, and C all the way through. 24 volt legacy, when you're wiring 24 volt legacy, once again, you can wire from your thermostat to your furnace can be 24 volts, okay? And if you're using base tier stuff, you're still 24 volts to the outside. But as soon as you go 15 SEER AC, 16 SEER AC, and 16 SEER heat pump, it's 4-wire connectivity outdoor to indoor. Same with this, compatible both ways. You can either use the Contractor App, but if you have an Econet, you have to use the Econet on the furnaces. You can set stages, high heat, low heat. You can trim it however you desire. They've completely gotten rid of dip switches, and everything's done through the Contractor App now. So dip switches are completely gone on your variable speed boards. So everything's a toggle within the Contractor App. A little bit on troubleshooting here. So when you're dealing with your furnace boards, if you have a code in your status screen, you can pull up and diagnose exactly what's going on with the control boards. The one thing that I will tell you, and you're going to hear me stress this a lot, when you walk up to these units, we've always gotten in the habit of shutting power down, taking our old board out, putting our new board in, turning the power switch back on, right? That's kind of always been how we've done it in the past. Always get in the mindset with this new control and with the Contractor app. When you walk up to a unit, if that control board has power to it, connect to the app first before changing that board. It will make your life a lot easier. And the reason being is because what it's going to do is it's going to pull all that data off that old control board. And then when you put the new control board, it's going to flash the new control board, because the new control boards are universal control boards. They're not flashed with models and serial numbers. Okay, you have to physically flash it so it knows what the parameters for blower, high heat, low heat, single stage, two stage are. Okay. Bluetooth connectivity. All the new furnaces and air handlers that have Bluetooth, you'll see this. You can either take a picture of that and pull it up, or you can go to your app store, whether you have Android or iPhone, and you can pull it up through there as well. The boards do have some LEDs on them, and it will give you some status information, but still the easiest way to find that data is in the Contractor app. So always try to go to your Contractor app, connect via Bluetooth, and you can look and see exactly what your status is through there. It'll give you CFM ratings, things like that, if the unit's running. One thing that I do want to talk about is on the Bluetooth connectivity. I get this question a lot. Well, what if I don't have cell service? You don't need cell service to connect to the Bluetooth. You just have to be within 10 feet of the unit, and it should connect to the Bluetooth. So a little bit about the flame sense. The flame sense can no longer be checked with microamps DC. They have changed this to a digital signal now. I want to be 100% transparent with you guys because I've run into this numerous times. There are some issues right now with control boards on furnaces, and it'll give you a fault code saying flame present without gas valve energized. Okay. What we have done is, originally they were saying that there was bad resistors on the board that was causing it. Not saying that there's not bad resistors, but one thing that they are investigating, because that is a digital signal, the way those wires are routed, your flame sensor wire, it's routed through the cabinet with the spark ignition wire, and they both run together. There's a little grommet in the separation plate, and they go up into the burner box. One thing that I will tell you, if you install one of these furnaces, take your ignition wire, separate it from the flame sensor wire, pull it back through that separation plate, and run it back down through the other bundle of wires through the larger hole, and get those at least 2 to 3 inches apart from each other. I've had units that guys have gone out and replaced 4 boards and still have that same issue. And something that they're testing in the factory right now is separating those wires. What I can tell you, and I just took a phone call before I walked in here, is a guy replaced a board, left them together, because I've been working with this same contractor on this issue. He kept them together to see if it truly was the board or separating the wires was working. He didn't separate the wires, and guess what? 5 days later, he's getting a phone call. Hey, my alarm's going off on my Econet again. I'm getting that same code. And he just called me to let me know, hey, I'm going to separate the wires because that seems to be the fix. So if you guys install one of these, just make sure you reroute that. So one thing that they have changed a little bit is the blower motor. And this is the new wiring of the blower motor. On the blower motor, you still have CLGNN, which is your high voltage coming in. It's done on air handlers, so it's 208, 230 on air handlers, or it'll be 120 volts. You have constant 120 volts. ECM motors have been this way forever. You always have a constant 120. But what they've changed in this is now it's a 4-wire pin connector that goes into this. What they've done is they've taken a constant torque ECM motor and they've added a PWM signal and a feedback signal so that it communicates back and forth. So they've taken a plain constant torque and now made it variable speed. A little bit on how to check this. So if you're troubleshooting this, you're going to have 24 volts DC between here and common, constant. Okay? Between PWM and common, you should be getting 1 to 24 volts DC fluctuation. Between your blue wire, which is your feedback wire, and common, you should be getting 1 to 24 volts DC. That's how you check this motor. You no longer use a motor tester. It will. It'll go to 100%. Basically what you're going to do is if for any reason you're having issues with this blower and you pull that feedback wire off, you've now turned it into a constant torque ECM motor. So what it does, this PWM signal sends a signal out to the blower from the control board, and then this feedback measures the RPM of what that blower's. So one's telling it what RPM it needs, the other one's telling the actual true RPM, and then it just continuously measures back and forth. But yes, great question. Once again, that between 4 here and common, you're going to have 24 volts DC, constant. All right, so we're gonna jump into the outdoor section. Some of the changes on the outdoor. Talk a little bit about compressors. So, starting on the right, the variable speed scroll is still what they're using in the 18s here, AC and heat pump. It's the same compressor that they were using in the 20. I believe the 17 also had that compressor. But that is the same compressor. That really has not changed. What has changed is the twin rotary inverter compressor. The twin rotary has been around for a long time. They've been using it in mini splits forever and ever and ever. So on what it is, it's a Toshiba twin rotary compressor. And I'll jump into a little bit on the operation and how that exactly works, but they're using that right now in the RA15, the UA16, and UP16. So that's going to be your mid-tier inverter. Your 2-stage scrolls and single-stage scrolls, the reason I have this up here is because right now they're using 2 different scrolls. They're using an LG scroll and a Copeland scroll. So when you call in, it is adamant that you have model and serial number off that unit, because every unit that comes out will have a compressor code, and it's going to tell us whether there was an LG scroll or a Copeland scroll in there so we can get you the right replacement. Something that's changed in the nomenclature is now they've added the A and Z. Z just means 410A. They're probably setting that up for the new A2Ls that are coming out, so that when they change to the A2Ls in 2025, all they have to do is add a letter into that nomenclature. And then on the A, it'll either be A or N. We'll see the N's up here in the North region. A's are for all region. The only one currently that's using the N is the 13 SEER, the new 13 SEER unit. A little bit about the nomenclature. Like I said, 13, you're going to see the NZ, which just means North region, and then everything else currently in the models are all regions. I put this in here, and I get a lot of conversation about this. This is right out of the installation manual of an inverter compressor, or an inverter outdoor unit, condensing unit. It is recommended to wait at least 12 hours after electrical power is applied to the outdoor unit before starting the compressor to assure any liquid refrigerant inside the compressor has been driven out by the compressor stator heat. Guys, I'm going to tell you, this is important, but when it's 95 degrees outside, it's probably a little less important than when it's 30 degrees outside, okay, if you're starting up a heat pump. My recommendation to you is get high voltage to the outdoor unit as early in the day as you possibly can, so when you're ready to walk off that job at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, everything's good to go, and you can power that unit and probably have pretty good confidence that it's going to start and run. Reason being is because inverter compressors don't have the starting torque as a PSC style compressor. So you always want to make sure. You will get funny codes. You'll get inverter fault codes if there is liquid refrigerant trapped in that compressor and it will not allow it to start. So just something I wanted to point out. So this is your model mix. We have our base series. We have RA13, RA14, single stage, nothing really exciting about that stuff. Your RA15 and UA16, this is your mid-tier inverter. This is the one that's using that twin rotary Toshiba compressor, okay? Your UA18, that's the one that's using your Copeland inverter scroll, okay? 18 SEER unit, if you put it in a 24 volt application, you can run it in emergency situations only, and it'll run at 100% capacity. The 15, 16 SEER models of this will change it from modulating to a 3-stage compressor, and I'll break that down here in a little bit. Any questions on that? Heat pumps, your base RP14, we have a mid-tier 15. These units are going to be 2-stage. Okay? So if for some reason you want to make it single stage, jumper Y1 and Y2, and it'll run in high stage all the time. I ran into a situation not too long ago where I had a guy call me and he's like, hey, I only have a single stage thermostat, what do I do? I'm like, well, you can either change the thermostat to a 2-stage thermostat, or you can jumper Y1 and Y2 and make it a single stage unit. The reason I believe that Ruud went this direction on the heat pump side of things is the cost difference between single stage and 2-stage was not that great for heat pumps. And I'm a big advocate for 2-stage units. Okay, I think you get better dehumidification out of a 2-stage unit than you do a single stage unit. I mean, that's been proven. And actually 2-stage units were probably my favorite going into the inverters. I thought they were very flexible. You got a lot of benefits out of the two-stage. The UP16, same thing. You can wire it 24 volt, but it's 24 volt from indoor to furnace and a 4-wire connection from outdoor to indoor. Same thing, if it goes 24 volt, it will then be a 3-stage versus modulating. 18 SEER, same thing, Copeland scroll inverter. So on your heat pump, this is kind of what we were used to, and this is what we knew and loved for a long time. Very basic contactor, defrost control board, and then we had our dual capacitor. Very easy to troubleshoot, very easy to go through this. This is that same board on your base tier system. Just kind of want to walk around this board a little bit. You got your Y1 out there. You have your high pressure control, low pressure control. You have your reversing valve here, your low voltage connections over here, your test pin, your defrost termination temperature. So pretty basic board, pretty simple. On the base tier units, instead of adding Y2 to this board, because those are 2-stage units on your base tier heat pumps, they've added this blue wire that comes in there and it's dangled. And I get this question probably once a week. Guys will call me and they're like, what's this blue wire hanging here? That is your 2nd stage. So that is your Y2 call. Basically, all it does is when you energize Y2 from the thermostat in a 24 volt application, it's going to energize your solenoid on your compressor to send it into high stage, and it also sends the fan into high stage as well. So this is your universal outdoor control board. One thing that they've gotten rid of, they've also gotten rid of the EEPROM or chip. So, you know, on the old style, they had the memory chip, a lot of people called it. They've gotten rid of those. Everything is done through Bluetooth now. So once again, same thing on your outdoor board. This goes for anything 15 SEER higher AC and 16 SEER higher heat pump. You're going to have Bluetooth connectivity to that outdoor unit now. Little bit of difference. Everything is kind of plug and play on this new board. Not as many connectors. This is kind of what it looks like on the mid-tier. You got power coming in. You have a contactor here, and then your universal outdoor control board. One thing that did change on this universal outdoor control board, you can actually pull that pin plug off, wire it, and then snap it back in. On the contactor here, one thing I want to stress on this, on any inverter system that has a contactor, never ever take this plate off and push that contactor in. If you do, you burnt that board, guaranteed. And I'll explain here in a minute a little bit why you never want to push that contactor in. Once again, your thermostat connection's there. On this mid-tier, this universal outdoor control board, even though it does have the Y2BW, I'll get to U1 and U and U2 in a minute. Even though it has those connectors, I'm being told, and I have not been able to try this yet, those are dead on the board. Okay? The only thing that is good is E1, E2, R, and C on this board. Why it's there and you can't use it, I don't know. I haven't had a chance to get down to our lab and be able to try it yet. U and U2, does anybody know what those are for? It's for your utilities when you're using like load shed devices. I don't know if you guys have a lot of load shed device up here. I know in Cincinnati they're all over the place through Duke Energy down there. But that's how you would hook in for your load shedding device. You never want to break R or anything like that, because if you do, you're going to interrupt your E1 and E2 every time that R is dropped out of the circuit. So you'll start throwing error codes. So you always want to wire in to U and U2. So let's walk around this board a little bit. We got our Bluetooth transmitter. Once again, we have our discharge temperature sensor, our outdoor temperature sensor, suction and coil temperature sensor, liquid temperature sensor. Something else that is a little newer to this is the suction transducer and liquid transducer. Got your thermostat connections along the bottom. Got your reversing valve hookup here. High pressure control. Pressure relief valve. Your MODBUS connection. And then your test button. If you're in a 24 volt application, you can use this test button and send it into charging mode through here. If you're in an Econet, you're going to send it in charging mode through the Econet. So it does have some LEDs on it. Once again, I always recommend connecting to your Contractor app and seeing what that thing's doing. The LEDs are pretty vague. It's just going to tell you really if it's in heat cool and if it's communicating. A little bit on the wiring. Once again, on the low voltage, E1, E2, R, and C are the only things that are active on the mid-tier boards. Same thing, 4-wire connectivity. Outdoor unit. Hopefully you guys are seeing kind of a common theme here. UP16, UA16, RA15, 4-wire connectivity, indoor and outdoor. So let's get into that just a little bit. So I have a 3-year-old furnace that I want to put a UA15 on, and it's not a Ruud furnace, and I'm going to try to use a RA15. Can I do it? Nope. Can't put it on there because it doesn't have the 4-wire Econet connectivity to it. So I'm just telling you this because I want you to be very cautious when you're trying to sell these things or when you're installing them or servicing them, that you understand that if I don't have an Econet compatible indoor unit, I cannot put these units with that indoor. It has to be compatible. So on the mid-tier, I want to explain how it works with an Econet and how it works in a 24 volt mode. Okay. So on an Econet, what it's going to do is it gets a call for cooling or heating, depending on whether it's AC or heat pump. It's going to go up to 45%. It will modulate between 45 and 70 as needed. It just goes up and down, full modulating. Okay? Once it hits that 70%, then you get the contactor snapping in, you get inrush voltage, and then it'll go to 100%. That is why it's important that you never push in the contactor on these. Because that inverter, as it's modulating, it may only be at 180 volts or 130 volts, depending where it's at. Okay? Because it's running off that inverter drive. Until it is equalized at that 70%, because that board knows at 70% capacity that the voltage on the inverter board should be 230 volts and my inrush is going to be 230 volts to get to that 100%. Until it hits that 70%, it knows that the voltage is lower, and that's why you don't want to inrush 230 volts immediately, or else it'll fry the board. Okay? On a 24 volt application, so if you're legacy wired, you've turned it into a 3-stage outdoor unit. Y1 call, it's going to go to 45%. It's going to run at 45% for roughly 5 to 12 minutes, but no longer than 20 minutes. Okay? Then it's going to stage up to 65%. It'll run at 65% until your Y2 comes in. Once Y2 comes in, then you get the inrush voltage and it goes to 100%. Doesn't matter if you're in Econet or 24 volt, once it goes to 100%, it can never stage out of 100% and go back to either modulation or second stage or middle stage if you want to look at it that way. That makes sense? Once it goes to high stage, it'll run at 100% in the call at 100%. Now, this does build an algorithm in there, so your starting point may be different depending on how long your runtime was versus the previous run cycle. So it builds algorithm as this unit runs in that 24 volt application. So if it ran a really short time on 45% and staged right to second stage, it may jump right into second stage its next start. Okay? Just a little graph, a little overview graph of the difference in the Econet and the energy savings with the Econet versus running it with a 24 volt thermostat. Few conditions that will change that. If your outdoor temperature is over 95 degrees, saturated liquid temperature is greater than 120, or saturated suction temperature is less than 0 degrees Fahrenheit after 15 minutes runtime, then it's going to change how it looks at the staging. It'll jump to a higher stage faster. These will do low ambient cooling as well. So a little bit on troubleshooting on Econet. So if you're using four-wire connectivity in the Econet application, on E1 to E2, you're going to read 3 volts DC. This can be checked at any given point within the system because that voltage is an output voltage everywhere it is connected. So if you're reading it at the outdoor unit, you can literally take off E1 and E2 off the outdoor unit. You can read it there or on the wires, and you should have that 3 volts DC between E1 and E2. Between E1 and common is also going to be 3 volts. That's actually where you're getting that 3 volt signal. E2 is going to be 0 to 0.2 fluctuation. So if you're reading E2 to common, you should see 0.2 fluctuation. That's actually your full communicating back and forth. R and C, you're going to have 24 volts AC on R and C. If you remove 24 volts from R and C, that does not necessarily mean that 24 volts is lost, because like I said, each individual component is giving voltage. Okay, so if you're trying to reset a code or something in a board, you need to disconnect high voltage and low voltage to get that to reset. High pressure switch opens at 610, resets at 490. And that's where you're going to find your high pressure switch on the control board. Your low pressure switch has 2 different settings, and the reason they've gone to this is because they've used a pressure transducer on it versus an actual switch. So in cooling mode, it'll open at 50 and close at 95. Heating mode is 15 and 40 now. So it has 2 different parameters that it can look at because they're using a pressure transducer, not just a common pressure switch. And here's where your low pressure suction transducer connects into the board. Okay, so the biggest change is the Contractor App with the new variable speed units. And I'm going to tell you, it's supposed to be an easier thing to use, but until you get to play with it and use it and know it, it's not the easiest thing to do. I've spent countless hours on the phone with contractors, helping them walk through and learning a few things myself about it. It's in time, it's going to be a lot easier. It'll be second nature. It'll be just like pulling an old control board out, changing the dip switches before you put the new control board in. Okay. The nice thing is once you've pulled that data off of that control board, it is saved. So when you put the new control board in, you really don't have to change any settings at that point, because it's mirrored what you've pulled off of that. Okay. So on the Contractor App, we're going to try to introduce it a little bit to you, and hopefully you understand it. If there are any questions on it all, please stop me at any time to go over it. So 3 main things that you can do on the Contractor App. This is kind of what it looks like when you pull it up right here. It's going to give you 3 different screens. It's going to give you install, it's going to give you service, and then it's going to give you sell. Okay. The sell, I'm not really going to jump a whole lot into the sell part of this, but if you guys have comfort advisors back at your shop, this may be something that they want to dig into and look into, because there are a lot of benefits in that sell app. So why did they go to this? Easier and faster installation and commissioning of units using Bluetooth. Okay. Peace of mind, fewer truck rolls. Once again, parts, guys. You can carry about 5 different parts to fix 95% of the new variable speed furnaces. I mean, that's pretty impressive. So you need 1/2 horsepower motor, 3/4 horsepower motor, universal outdoor control board, single stage and 2-stage furnace boards, maybe an air handler board. Typically air handler boards don't go bad very often, but you may need one. That's it. Everything else, it just mirrors off of the unit that you're taking it out of. Convenient registration and warranty sign up. You can actually go in the Contractor app now and you can register the warranty before you ever even walk out the door. Now, with that being said, if you have a sweet little girl in your office that does all your warranty registrations, please do not replace her through the Contractor app. Keep her employed, okay? I don't want to take anybody's job away from them, but if you're a small guy and time is of an essence for you, it does give you the opportunity to go in there and register the warranty right through the Contractor app. Once again, fewer components, fewer tools, pressure gauges, because it's got pressure transducers on it, right? So now you can just pull up the Contractor app and say, hey, I'm running 130/260. I don't even have to hook my gauges up. I can see it through the Contractor app. So, way to get started here. Like I talked about earlier, every one of these new units has this QR code. Scan the QR code. It's going to take you right to whether your iPhone or Google, it's going to take you right there. You can also look it up through the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. If you have a login, a MyRuud login, I highly suggest logging into the app. If you don't have a MyRuud login and want a MyRuud login, get with Darryl. He'll get you set up with a MyRuud login. Okay? There's a lot of features and functionality in this that you can use if you're logged in. You can still log in as a guest if you want to log in as a guest. You just lose a lot of functionality in the app. You can still change parts, things like that, connect to it, but there are other features. Once again, you have your install, service, and sell. You're just going to tap whichever icon that is most relevant to you at the time. This is the logged in features, as I was talking about, versus the guest features. So once again, you can still service the unit as a guest, but you get 3 times, 4 times more out of the app if you have a login. So in the install app, I finished my install. Now I'm going to connect to the unit. I'm going to go to setup with Bluetooth. I'm going to jump in that screen, go through and set my parameters on how I want that unit to run. You can also, if you tap in here on this QR code and you can scan the QR code. There are QR codes literally everywhere on this thing. You can scan the blower motor with a QR code. There's a QR code on the control boards. There are QR codes on the nameplate you can scan. There are QR codes everywhere. I will tell you they were having some issues scanning the QR codes through the app, but I believe they fixed that now. From everybody that I've talked to, it's okay now, but you can also scan it through there. If you install and you're having an issue, you can run diagnostic on it, and it'll tell you exactly what the code is that it's giving you. System status gives you a lot of information about where your pressures are on the outdoor unit, what CFM your blower's running, so on and so forth. Service, same thing. Connecting with Bluetooth, if you're doing a service and repair, it's kind of hidden on this one, but it's right up there. You have same QR scan code, run diagnostics, system status. Couple other nice features that you can have. If you are logged in and have a login, you have this Econet HVAC technician. That thing I use typically once a week. I'm on that with a contractor. That is really, really nice. It tells you, gives you explanation of the codes and things like that. The Contractor App is also, it has a lot of good information in it as well. When you're going through the service and diagnostics side of it, it tells you, gives you the same A_007, you know, that's still in there. You can also look up warranty. So if you're not sure if it's got the extended warranty attached to it, maybe you didn't install the unit, not real sure, you can go right on the Contractor App, put in the serial number, and it'll tell you if it's got an extended warranty attached to that unit. If you are in the cell, one nice feature about this is it does give you the option for a HRI lookup. So if you're not sure if you have an AHRI match, or you're out on a job and you're trying to sell somebody something and you want to make sure that you are selling them an AHRI match, it does give you this. I will caution you on this. If you are unsure, I highly suggest going to AHRI's website and looking that information up. The reason being is AHRI changes by the minute. And when I say it changes by the minute, I mean it changes by the minute. And from what I've been told, Ruud only updates this once a month. So it goes through a maintenance once a month. AHRI, like I said, it's updated. I mean, you may not see something in the morning and go there in the afternoon and there'll be an AHRI match there. Okay? So just, like I said, just be cautious when you're doing lookup, and if it's something that you're like, this has to be an AHRI match, go to AHRI. Couple other things that we got here. We got Rapid Spec and Design Star. If you do any commercial, I highly suggest starting an account with Rapid Spec. And if you have a MyRuud, MyReam, you can log into Rapid Spec through that. I used to use Rapid Spec on a minute-by-minute basis. You can go in and build units within Design Star. There's a lot of features and functionality if you sell commercial that Design Star will give you. I'm sorry, Rapid Spec, not. So you can go to rapidspec.com, and if you have a username and login for Ruud, MyRuud, you can use that and go directly into it. If not, you'll have to request a login. So once again, we'll walk through a little bit of the setup with it. You're going to click on Setup with Bluetooth through the install. You have air handler, furnace, outdoor unit. You click on whichever piece that you want, and it will literally walk through step by step exactly how to set that piece up. If you have multiple pieces that are connecting to Bluetooth, you're going to set up each individual piece. Okay? If you have multiple furnaces in the same space, you have to set both furnaces up individually. So it'll actually ask you which unit you want to connect to, and it'll show anything that's connected via Bluetooth. So if you have multiple furnaces or multiple air handlers, you'll have to select by serial number which one you want to connect to. If for any reason you have an Econet connected, the Econet is going to override and start taking over for the system. So you're going to do all your setup through the Econet. So none of that has changed. Just like the Econet overrode your dip switch settings, it's the same with the Contractor App. So you can tell it if you have a single stage, 2-stage outdoor unit, if you have a non-communicating outdoor unit, what tonnage it is. You can set your high and low gas fire on this. The one thing that I always like to point out is the side return. That used to be your plus and minus 7 on your dip switch settings. The reason they changed it to side return was if they rated it at -7, every unit that this was in had to be rated at -7, and that would have derated their furnaces. So they put it in there as side return. That way they didn't have to change any ratings. Defrost termination, you can set whether you want 50, 60, 70, 80 degrees. Another feature that is put in this, if it has an EXV, you can tune your superheat on your TXV as well. I don't know why you would want to do that, but there may be a situation that you run into that you want to look at a different superheat than what it's actually giving you. Still continuing through advanced settings. A lot of trim settings in this. So if you go into an advanced setting, you can do cool airflow trim. You can increase or decrease it by 5%. Heat pump airflow trim. You can also do it on the heating side as well. Once again, here's their EXV superheat offset. Does give you CFM ratings on high and low stage. I like that they put that in there. Only change the advanced settings if you have the required level of knowledge and expertise. I think everybody in here should have that. Staging, same thing here. You can change your tonnage. This is if you have a non-communicating outdoor unit. Blower airflow reduction. One thing you can change is, say you're running at a really low, you got really big ductwork or something like that. You're running really low end on your heat rise. You can change that to get it changed. You can reduce the blower CFM so that you can raise your heat rise. Because if you have too low of a heat rise, you'll start condensating and dripping down your blower housing off of the heat exchanger. It always gives you a warning when you go into advanced settings, just letting you know that you're continuing at your own risk. Defrost termination on your outdoor unit, all set up through the Bluetooth app. There's no pins or plugs or anything like that. No, like on the old style boards, they had those little pins that you could change. Those are all gone on the. Your old style board still has that on your base tier stuff or builder tier stuff, but everything that had everything 15 SEER AC or higher or 16 heat pump or higher is going to be all through the Bluetooth app. Getting the product information, once again, there are QR codes everywhere on this thing. Scan one of the QR codes. You can even scan the one like this one, and it'll populate model and serial number right there for you. Another nice feature, you can get product data out of this, out of PTS. So you can go into PTS, which is product technical support, pull up the model, and it'll give you documents. So say someone installed the unit, got rid of the knee pad, threw it in the trash, whatever the case is, you don't know, there's something that you need to look up, you can actually go to product technical support and pull up the installation manual. This is a logged in feature. You do have to be logged in for this. But that is a nice feature. You can also look up sales fact sheets. You can look up specification sheets if you're not sure about a specification or have an engineer wanting something that you're not sure of. You can look all that up in product technical support. Once again, warranty lookup, if you're out there and you want to look up warranty. One thing I will tell you about the warranty is the warranty card. If any of you have ever looked at a warranty certificate, that thing is written in a whole nother language. He's shaking his head yes. Obviously, he's looked at them. The nice thing, and I have this in another slide deck, I didn't put it in this slide deck. The nice thing about the new warranty cards are they are all written in a plain PDF file now. So they're much easier to read, much easier to navigate through. This thing was absolutely terrible. Now, since we're on the topic of warranty, Darryl loves when I go here. So, on the topic of warranty, the one thing that I want to caution you on is product matchup. Okay? If you're trying to warranty something, there are, on this new product line, there are limitations. Okay? One thing I will tell you is 13 and 14 SEER ACs, they used to have to be warranted as a coil outdoor unit. They have dropped that. You can still register those as, from what I've been told, I haven't tried it myself, but other salespeople have told me this, you can now warranty those standalone. Okay, that's your single stage ACs. Anything 15 SEER or higher AC has to be an AHRI matched and warranted as a system. On heat pump side, everything has to be warranted as a complete system. There are no coil heat pump only matches currently. Not to say that won't change, but everything currently is a match system. So if you're doing a dual fuel system, you have to have a match system. It has to be furnace, coil, outdoor unit matched. Extended. You get standard 5. You're going to get standard 5 regardless. This is just for if you're trying to register it for warranty, it will kick back if you do not have it as an AHRI match or a complete system on a heat pump. Okay? ACs, like I said, standalone 13, 14 SEER can still be registered. They're just basic single stage units, so not too much you can hurt on those. But heat pumps, because they are 2-stage and they are inverter, they have to be a complete system for extended warranty coverage. Okay, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, make sure we're very clear on that. I just had a situation not too long ago with a contractor that very upset because he didn't know that was the situation, and he put a 15 SEER AC with an older Econet compatible unit, but because it was Econet compatible, it would connect, but he could only get 5-year warranty on the outdoor unit. So just kind of wanted to bring that to light, share that with you guys, so that we understand that, you know, it's very important when you're doing this to make sure that you're pairing the equipment correctly. Okay. So let's jump into the diagnostic side of this a little bit. So you can go through your system status, and it'll show you system status. It'll give you the CFMs of your blower, the RPM of the blower. It'll also give you static pressure. Now, the one thing that I will tell you about the static pressure on this is this static pressure is probably going to be a lot better to use than actually trying to measure static pressure. Okay? The way that they have calculated this is very, very precise, and you're probably going to get a better static pressure out of that than what you're going to actually physically measure. So just wanted to point that out. You also can look at supply and return air temperatures. It'll give you system status. On the outdoor unit, it's going to give you outdoor temperature, suction line temperature, which is read on the outdoor unit. There's a suction a thermistor on the suction line as it enters the unit, and that's where it's actually reading it. It's not reading it on the indoor EEV. And the reason they did that is because not all units have EEVs, some of them have TXVs, so they put it on the outdoor unit. Suction pressure, once again, it's reading off of that suction pressure transducer that also controls the low pressure cutout in heating and cooling. Gives you, if you have an EXV, it'll give you your EXV superheat and current position of the EEV. So it's going to tell you what position, and whether it's completely open, completely closed, somewhere in the middle, which is good to know a lot of times on where your EEV is actually sitting. So if you're seeing something funny on your superheat, you're like, well, it's showing that it's open, you know, but it may not be, or it's stuck or something like that. This is reading the actual stepper motor position is what it's reading. Running diagnostic, once again, those same codes over there are the same codes that you're going to see in the Econet control. Now, I will tell you, I'm a big fan of the Econet control. I don't know how you guys feel about it. Some contractors don't like communicating thermostats, some contractors do. I like the functionality of the Econet, and I'm not up here trying to sell you something. I'm up here just telling you that I think it gives you a lot better functionality out of a system than what a 24-volt standard thermostat does. And if you're selling, say, a TH8321 versus an Econet, there's not that much cost difference, and you're going to get way better functionality out of the Econet. Once again, your diagnostic, you can go through, it'll show you active alarms, alarm history. You can also clear out any alarms in here once you've fixed the unit. You can go in and clear those out of the alarm history. Servicing the unit. So once again, I'm going to reiterate, when you are walking up to this unit and you have a part that you need to change out on it, connect to the board first. Okay? It will download your model and serial number into your app. If you are replacing a control board and it's hooked up to Econet, pull the Econet pin and disconnect the Econet from that control board. Because what will happen is it will send you into a tailspin in this big circle. because it's going to continuously try to find that Econet if it's plugged in. So it'll just tell you, set this up on the Econet. Well, you can't set it up with the Econet. You have to do the initial setup through the Contractor App, then plug in the Econet. Okay, does that make sense? Very important. I've run into that too many times where guys leave that Econet plugged in, and then like I said, it's just like, Rob, I got to here and it tells me to go use the Econet again. I tried it again and it does the same thing. It's because it's trying to read that Econet. Motors, one thing I want to touch on motors, I've run into this a few times and I don't know why. On the new outdoor units that are using the ECM motors that are programmed through the board, what I've run into is, for whatever reason, they seem to be losing connectivity with the board. So it'll give you a condenser fan motor fault is what it's going to give you. What you have to do in that situation is, it's truly not a bad fan motor, is you have to go through the service and repair and basically act like you're putting a brand new fan motor in there and reflash the fan motor to the control board. Once you've done that, it'll set the RPM range for it and everything will run fine and it'll stay. I don't know if it's because when they flash them at the factory and then they're powered down for a period of time that it's losing the memory. I don't know but I've had this call numerous times, and I'm just trying to let you guys know, if you get out there and you get a condenser fan motor fault, uninstall it, reinstall it through the app, and then it'll flash it to the control board on the outdoor unit, and everything's going to run fine for you. Yep. I get it probably about once a week. Somebody calls me on that, like, hey, I'm getting this condenser fan motor fault. What do I do? Same thing with the compressor, outdoor motor. We talked about the outdoor motor. Furnace, same thing. When you're in the furnace and you're changing a blower motor, you want to make sure that you pull the data first and then put the data back in, because you may have a 60,000 half horse 3-ton drive that uses the same exact motor as a 4-ton 70,000 drive furnace. So your parameters are going to be different between the two, so you just got to make sure that you're flashing it correctly. This is kind of what it looks like as you're going through it. I'm going to service it. It's going to connect and it's going to save the settings. Then it's going to tell you, power down the unit. This is the point that is so critical, because it's easier to connect this way first than doing it manually and putting in the serial number. So, for example, I go out there to the unit, it's got a dead board on it. Like, it will not power up the board. You can do this manually. There's a few more steps involved in doing it manually. You manually put in the serial number, it pulls the data, because all serial numbers are put into this Contractor App on a daily basis. So every furnace, it knows by serial number what the parameters were set from the factory from that furnace. So when you're going through it manually, you put in the serial number, it's going to upload that information through a manual method, but there are some more steps involved. Easiest way, connect to it. Once you've connected to it, it's going to tell you power down. Install the new control board. Power up the unit. If you see this, replacement controls do not have serial numbers, continue through that, okay? Because that is true. It does not have a serial number. So once you hit cancel, and then there will be a continue button on the next screen. Hit that continue button, and then it's going to populate your model and serial number on that next screen. It'll connect to the Bluetooth, say updating settings. So what you initially pulled that you stored on your phone is now updating to the new control board. Hit continue. You can also, I just put this slide in there because you can also scan the QR codes through the app on this as well. That's all I got. Any questions? Yeah, it's like I said, it's new. I understand. Some other manufacturers have a Contractor App already. It's a little different than this one, but it is. Once you get used to it, it is going to be easier. Okay. So I've had this conversation with every group prior, but I kind of want to jump into this just as kind of a final thought. How do you guys feel and what do you guys know about the new A2L refrigerants? Okay. So everybody knows in 2025, we're moving away from 410A. We're moving into A2Ls. A2Ls basically are R32 and R54B. Okay. R32 is being used by Daikin. R454B is being used by Allied Air and Ruud, which is who we rep, who we're distributors for. So a lot of the conversation right now on the A2Ls, and I'm not so sure it won't get pushed back a year. That's my opinion, personal opinion, just from things that I've heard. But on A2Ls, the biggest thing and a big reason a lot of manufacturers have done these switches and things is to get ready for the A2L refrigerants. Not only did they have to go SEER 2, but they had to think ahead because they already know, right? They already know that this A2L switch is coming in 2025. It's a little bit higher, actually. I believe so. When I say higher, it's and I had a comparison chart. I can look it up after we're done here. It's like 15 psi. It's not like way out there, and it depends on what stage the refrigerant is in as to where it's a little bit higher. It could be a little bit lower depending on what stage. It's not much. It's not much different. But big topic of conversation. You're going to see training sessions coming from our vendors on this. Please, if you get a chance, jump in one. Learn everything that you can learn. The biggest thing on the manufacturer side of it, I don't think everybody's quite figured out how the sensors are going to work, because with this being a slightly higher flammable refrigerant than what 410A is, the one thing that the government has now presented is you have to add sensors to it. And I just took a thing about 3 weeks ago on one of our manufacturers on how would you like the sensors to be put in the unit. So these are going to be supply sensors. So what it can do is if it senses that refrigerant, it will shut the system down. Okay, that's the whole purpose and intention of what the sensor is going to do. So just kind of wanted to just give you a little bit of feeder. I know we're going to start having some classes on some A2L refrigerant. Once again, I highly recommend jump into it because there are some changes and things that are going to come, not only on the manufacturer side, but just with the refrigerants in general.